just harvested some stuff called lemon freeze pot, and it smells like a lemon slushy on a summer afternoon. I mean, like it makes me just want to eat like some lemon cream slushy on the Virginia Beach boardwalk. And I don't like doing shit like that, but that's what that smell reminds
Right,
me of, you
right.
know? Or as sophisticated as that crowd can get in Hampton, I guess we could say.
I know you play bluegrass, and one thing that from playing bluegrass that I discovered is there's some pretty good money gigs because it's music that everybody can be happy with. It's major key, and it doesn't really get a chance to offend anybody. So people are willing to
Yeah,
pay.
yeah, and everybody remembers their grandpa or dad or somebody loved bluegrass. That was
Yeah, actually, as far as the work that you've done with the VA, man, like, how did you get into that?
well, like trying to legalize just kind of happened on a fluke, I would say. I was like when I was hanging out in it was probably about oh nine somewhere around there. This dude in Norfolk, he was like a 1980s era Army nurse veteran. Um, and but he had this space over. You remember the old farmers market on Church Street, like between like 26th and 27th Streets in Norfolk?
I know where that
It
area
was like a
is,
little,
but I'm not sure about the farmers market.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So like I was finishing up culinary school on my GI Bill and working at this farmers market there, and he had this space, this building adjacent to it, and kind of reminiscent of the 1960s era GI like anti-war coffee houses.
Right.
And so yeah, like so I met him through the farmers market and hung out with him there, and he introduced me to all these like post 9/11 anti-war veterans like me, and yeah, hanging out with those cats and just other veteran friends. And I got that's how I got into activism was through that route. But then like just hanging out with veterans in general, I realized like so many of us were like smoking weed, like and like there were more people hanging out in the smoking circles smoking weed than cigarettes. And just about everybody said it made us drink less, it made us take less pills, and I was like, well, why the fuck aren't we talking about this shit openly then? Like, why are we, we're fighting against war. This is the biggest war in the history of this country is the war on drugs. And, so I think as veterans, we have ways. So then I was like, well, what the fuck, what's going on with this? So I started just, you're a lot like me where you get on a topic, you're like, okay, I got to find out every single thing there is to know about this topic. So I just started looking like who was doing work at the federal level on marijuana reform for veterans, and it was a very, very, very tiny community. And it just so happened to be this guy was a little bit earlier 1980s era veteran, Air Force, and he got disabled kind of by a freak accident. He was just like transferring between duty stations or some shit, and he just happened to be stuck in Guam for a couple of weeks. How the military did us, And like he was going out, walking off of base one day, got hit by a fucking motorcycle randomly and completely fucked him up, and 100% disabled. And so he started, and well, so he just happened to be in southwestern Virginia, and this dude is straight out of a Cheech and Chong movie. I mean, like he is the most stereotypical fucking Cheech and Chong character I've ever met in real life. And yeah, but like I was getting ready to go on this podcast in Colorado. What this was I guess about 2012, fall of 2012. I was getting ready to talk on this podcast. Like Colorado had medical for a couple of years, I think, and they were about to legalize fully recreational. And like so, some of my anti-war buddies out there were like, "Yeah, come on this podcast talking about weed and all, and like we want to talk to you about a veteran that's open about using medical marijuana in a prohibition state." So I'm like, all right, cool. So that's when I reached out to my buddy Mike Crowitz in Southwestern Virginia. And I was like, dude, your name is the name that kept popping up when I was searching for like, veterans, medical marijuana, Department of Veterans Affairs. And so this was probably, at this point, it's probably getting to like December of 2012. And like, so we immediately strike up this like bond and all because I'm like 3 hours from DC. And like within a few days of talking to him, I'm being contacted by Representative Congressman Earl Blumenauer's office. He's the one. So he wears a fucking bicycle on the floor of the U.S. House of Representatives. And yes, he is the congressman all for like biking and shit. Like his district in Oregon is like one of the most biker friendly areas in the country. But also, it's because of his support of like psychedelic legalization. And so, but like it's kind of that's the hidden meaning of his office was reaching out to me like within a couple of days of talking to this dude in Virginia. And like they're like, oh, well, look over this legislation that we're about to introduce because we want to make sure veterans are going to support it and it's going to help veterans and all. I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool. And yeah, like it just kind of snowballed from there. And like then by March of 2013, I was staying in this like swanky two like 10 bedroom suite hotel in DC that was Dr. Bronner's magical soaps.
Oh wow.
I'm not sure if you're familiar.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But so Dr. Bronner's in the medical marijuana organizing community, one of their commitments back then was because they were so committed to the legalization effort that they wanted to make sure that all of the citizen activists that came to DC to lobby for marijuana legalization each year with Americans for Safe Access had the same treatment and accommodations that hotshot DC lobbyists get. And so I was staying in this fucking I had never been in a hotel room like this before. I mean, I'd only seen it, torn apart by rock stars in the 80s and videos,
Yeah.
you know. and, uh, and like, yeah, and like I'm meeting with these lawyers, like top notch lawyers, and like motherfuckers that are like walking the halls of like the Capitol, like telling legislators what they're gonna introduce in bills and shit, and seeing the fucking ebb and flow of the like underbelly of DC and how it all fucking operates, and yeah, like I'm just fucking dude from the Dismal Swamp. So yeah, that's kind of how it got started. But yeah, no, it's been an interesting ride. I just want to end war. That's all I care about. Whatever war we're talking about, I don't want no more war.
I think that both of us being an advocate for marijuana over painkillers too. I mean, I imagine that you said that was the thing that really united all of y'all was that it got you off the pills.
Yeah. For me, it was antidepressants and antipsychotics. At the time, was it 2011 was my second suicide attempt, and it was like 10 years almost to the day of my first one, which was when I was in the Navy. And like I was addicted to Ativan, and I would do now I say I would do the Chris Cornell. I would pop a couple of Ativan, have a couple of drinks, and then completely black the fuck out and not know what the fuck was going on.
Mm-hmm.
And the second suicide attempt, I had a brand new bottle of Ativan from the VA because they would just hand me that shit. I got 30 a month, and whatever the fuck I did with them over those 30 days was my business. And so that first day I had them, I don't even know how many I took, but I took close to, at least probably three-quarters of the bottle, and drank every single drop of alcohol in the house, and yeah, blacked out for a couple of days. The only reason I remember anything that happened was because just people telling me. I drove to work at the tap house and tried to go to work, and one of the other employees was like, dude, you're too fucked up. Go home. He's like, you need me to get you a ride home? And I don't even know how I think I blew a tire out on Hampton Boulevard. So yeah, so like then after that experience, one of the bartenders at the tap house who was also the weed connect, he real good friend, still a great friend of mine. He was like, dude, man, I will give you all the fucking weed you need just to get off the fucking pills. And yeah, like that's kind of how I never looked back. I have recently found out that I've been what about 6 months ago or so I was diagnosed with ADHD. My wife, who I've known since we were in high school, started dating in high school. She said she just always thought I knew I had ADHD, but like, and finally I've realized that all these fucking pills they were throwing at me were the wrong fucking pills to treat me, because all my depression and anxiety and shit comes from the ADHD. And so yeah, so like I am taking when I'm taking a real low dose of Ritalin and a pretty high dose of Strattera, but not the highest dose of Strattera. But that's like I balance everything out with cannabis, and but also when I started taking those two drugs, I noticed my demeanor get even better. I'm a happier person. I'm more motivated, do more shit, and also my cannabis intake reduced.
Oh.
So therefore my tolerance went down a little bit. I mean, so like if I have a shitty day, it just takes less weed to get me better.
Yeah, I guess for me, when it comes to reefer, is I smoke until it hurts less, and that's
But yeah,
that's my
yeah.
plan.
Well, I mean, that's why I've got this cup of tea so I can sit here for a while. I mean, you play upright bass, you know what it feels like the day after a fucking gig.
Oh,
That whole you're left-handed, so that whole left side of your body is sore from standing and hugging that fucking bass.
I learned to really play in the most ergonomic way possible, so that I would be able to
Yeah.
do those 5 hour gigs with Wayne Hancock.
Oh God. Luckily I was the sound guy, so I could like move around, sit down in a chair,
Yeah.
go get more alcohol.
5 hours, baby.
Oh gosh. Oh gosh. I can only
Four
imagine.
4 hours was typical, but once there was
Yeah,
5,
oh yeah.
and that was in LA at the Redwood, and we had the next day off, and it was awesome because I could hear this tendon right here go like rubbing against each. It was, I couldn't believe it was possible. I just put like an arm cast on and some spray icy hot and just rested it. You can actually
Oh god.
you can find a few videos if you look where I was wearing the cast for some gigs, because
Yeah.
that was that's boot camp for bass players, baby. Ain't no drummer, you're the drummer.
Yeah, yeah, no, I get it. That goes back to that bluegrass shit.
Yeah.
You're the tie that binds the band together.
That's right. You are
It's
you're the guts.
we say that playing electric bass, but it's really true in these acoustic bands.
Well, yeah, I mean, you have the option to walk all over the place and do a bunch of stuff, but the more honest to God simple that you keep it with the passing tones in between, the better it's going to sound, especially for bluegrass. Like, There's no reason to go doing some
Yeah,
Jaco
yeah,
Pastorius bullshit when you're playing bluegrass. That's a great way to get fired.
yeah. And that's the thing. Like, so we played this gig yesterday. I mean, like, we're not even really ready to be playing out, but we're all like, fuck it.
Fuck
The
it.
area needs bluegrass bands, and also like uh our main vocalist, and he also plays mandolin when his arm's not broken. Juan, he spends half the year in North Dakota. He's a retired doctor. There's two retired doctors in the band, me, the disabled veteran, and then two active duty, one Coast Guard, one Navy. And yeah, so Juan, one of the retired doctors in the band, spends half the year in North Dakota with his in-laws who are like in their 90s. So, and we just started at the beginning of the year, so he wants to cram as much as he can in before he leaves to go out to North Dakota.
Well, I mean,
And you know how gigging in Hampton Roads is. There ain't gigs until the beach opens up, basically.
there's a few cold weather gigs, but that's if you know the right people and the right places are
Right?
having
Yeah,
them. But aside from that, it's just a good time to write or woodshed.
yeah. I mean, I'm surprised we're actually picking up. But where the thing we did yesterday is this old. You may have heard of it when you were around town. Cabin Fever Picking Party.
No.
And it used to happen over at that the like Holiday Inn Convention Center in Hampton, right there by the Coliseum. And like when I first started my radio show, so that was probably about the time we'd met,
Yeah, driving and
oh 04, oh
driving.
05. And so when I first started my radio show, the first few years, like they'd give me press passes to come over there because I played bluegrass on the radio, and like, but like this whole fucking hotel would just be full, every corner, anywhere a group could assemble, and just people at all levels, all ages just picking together, and you just roam around until you find something you feel comfortable playing in. That's what I did last night. So we like so they canceled the family. Been a family run festival for like since it began, and it came back last year, and it had moved over here to right where 64 and 264 meet, Virginia Beach, Norfolk split right there. There's a nice Holiday Inn right there for
Yeah.
shit like this. And so been having it there for years, and then COVID kind of knocked it out. And then last year it came back, and I went last year because that's when I was starting to get back to playing again. And yeah, and it was pretty fun last year, but not as big as it was when I went to it over in Hampton. Then this year, the family that put it on, like about a month before it was supposed to happen, backed out and canceled it. And so, luckily, we have the Tidewater Bluegrass Music Association, which is where I'd met my buddy Juan through local left wing organizing activist stuff. Known him since about 2017, but like I don't know how long he's been into like he's always been into music and playing and stuff, but in the last few years really got heavy into like wanting to get a band together and stuff like that. And so he convinced me to start coming out to this TBMA, picking circles. And I knew the group from back when I had the radio show. It's funny because you never think this would be something that would exist in this day and age. But back when I had the radio show, there were two competing bluegrass associations in Hampton Roads,
Oh wow.
and they were like arch enemies. It was hilarious.
It's like the swing dancers.
And and so yeah, but like these cats would always call me up and let me know what was going on so I can plug their events and all. So I knew who they were. My buddy Juan had gotten involved and on the board, and so that's kind of where this project came together. The Dismal Swamp Ditchgrass Project. I can say that I came up with the name happily. But we are a collective effort. But when Juan and I were talking about this, and it's kind of a I'm kind of almost I don't know, joking on bluegrass band names with our name in a fun kind of way though.
Yeah, yeah.
But if you ever pay attention to like the regional and like the like competitive bluegrass bands, and for people out there that don't know music at this level that we're talking, there is a competitive bluegrass. I'm sure there's a competitive every genre of music circuit that like you actually go through like all these like you start at your local level, work up to a regional level, a state level, and then you eventually get all the way. It's I think in bluegrass, it's the International Bluegrass Music Association, and used to happen in Nashville every year, and like,
Hmm.
but like they would have like a best picker
Yeah.
competition, and like yeah, and so yeah, but I don't even know where I was going with this, but like, but that's kind of how that's how deep this shit gets, and like, and going back to talking about the festival yesterday, so the local Bluegrass Music Association picked up organizing the festival like a month ago, made it free. I was like, hey, we need people to like actually formally play instead of just having all these little pockets of informal playing everywhere because they also and like, but that's so a lot of the musicians on this level. Oh, I know what I was talking about because I said we aren't really ready to play out.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
But like yeah, we get these cats on. So like typically at this festival in previous years, like it's paid bands, and a lot of the bands that you're watching are these cats that are going on to be in the mandolin competition or the flat picking competition or best bluegrass bass player at the
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
IBMAs. And I'm like, here's our little piddly band that's been together for 4 months, and and oh, going back to the name, and so the name came from all of these types of bands. They tend to have a name that describes where they're from, or it's a very very distinct feature of their region. And so when
Yeah.
when me and Juan were talking about this project, I just jokingly said, I kind of went through that, not as in as much detail, but I was like, so what's something distinctive? I'm like, I've grown up and I still live right along the edge of the Great Dismal Swamp. I said, but we're not great. So we can't call ourselves the Great Dismal Swamp Ditchgrass Project. And ditchgrass is what we think of as we play because like again, like we aren't like these motherfuckers that want to go on and win these competitions and play traditional Bill Monroe flattened scruggs and all that shit all the fucking time. We love that shit too, but like we don't want to be held to a certain specific bluegrass standard. Now, when I listen to bluegrass, that's what I prefer to listen to. That's why I said I don't want to call us an actual bluegrass band. Let's call ourselves ditch grass. And that's also what I call my weed that I grow. I call it dismal swamp ditch grass.
So,
So yeah, that's so we're the dismal swamp ditch grass project because we're not great and we're a project. We're always a work in progress. And it's whoever can play. We'll pare down to a duo if we want to, if that's all who's available, or we're this one could be up to like 6 people total. That's just like a couple people coming in, somebody playing a couple tunes on fiddle, and somebody singing. Female vocalist coming in singing some leads and adding that female harmonies and stuff. So yeah, but it's all fun. It's real loose. Probably our we really love playing the like Dwight Yoakam bluegrass shit. I mean, but who wouldn't? If you like playing music, you should enjoy playing some shit like that. And it's kind of easy, but has a little twists and turns in there because of Dwight's vocal range. But yeah, it's fun. And yeah, we also do a version of Valerie, made very popular by Amy Winehouse. And that's a fun one to do, and people tend to like it. We play "You Are My Sunshine" in a minor key.
Yeah, kind of
So
like Dead
that's
South.
yeah. That's where we actually want to add "In Hell I'll Be in Good Company" to our repertoire too eventually.
T-
But
Tamara,
that one takes a little practice.
Tamara and I saw Dead South at the garage here in Saarbrücken. It was a pretty damn good show. Um,
But
when you were just touched on exactly on your mug. Actually, this is a good time to mention that. How did you get into growing? Like,
um, being too poor to afford how much weed I need to smoke to be like an okay person. Um, I so my buddy that I told you about that like gave me all the weed I needed to get off the pills, and I quit cold turkey, which I do not recommend anybody ever do. Always consult your doctor, and you're most likely going to have to wean off of them. But within 2 weeks, I felt like I'd never taken those pills at all. And it was all because of how much weed I had to smoke. But that same buddy, he grew, and so I would help him around his grow and help kind of the way you learn to grow, at least what's called kind of the Cali way, the California way, is you each one teach one type mentality, where if somebody shows an interest and really wants to learn a certain aspect, then the way that cannabis cultivation has been handed down in the US generationally has been kind of like either it's passed down in the family like a family farm, or it's passed down to people like me who are like, hey, let me learn how to do that. And then you learn how to trim. Like first thing like they'll start, people start showing you their plants when they trust. And this is before everywhere was legalizing too. But it was maybe a year or two after I started getting heavily involved in marijuana legalization efforts, and I was just like, you know what, if the Virginia government isn't going to legalize, then I'm willing to take the risk of having to go to court and fight this battle, uh, because I'm a disabled veteran. Like I hate hero worship, however I will exploit it. I'm a I'm a I'm a Marxist in a capitalist society, so I'm going to exploit the fuck out of capitalism. And so yeah, but also like I see it in almost like a Robin Hood sort of way, though, where I was just talking about this with my wife the other day about how a lot of veterans don't realize that we are actually direct constituents to every single elected official in Washington, D.C.
yeah,
Because as a veteran, every single one of those people votes on what your basic rights, whatever, are as far as education, disability benefits, where you can be buried, what kind of burial benefits you get. And I learned this kind of through, walking the halls in DC too, from local DC residents, because this is how DC petitions for statehood every year, because DC, again, every single law that DC passes has to be passed by the U.S. House of Representatives, and we're actually seeing this bullshit play out right now. I can't remember what law it was, but I think it was like some criminal reform law or something that DC passed, and since the U.S. House of Representatives is Republican controlled right now, they were able to pass some bullshit, or they were able to reject whatever this DC law was. It like narrowly made, or no, it doesn't have to go through the Senate. It's just the House of Representatives, then it goes to the president, and Biden approved what the House of Representatives approved. And so yeah, like, so I learned this kind of way of, direct constituent lobbying activism And the fact that as a veteran, as you know, especially as a disabled veteran, having my health care specifically voted on directly by Congress, that I have a direct voice with every single, and we would use that to kind of get into some like, especially for me, like, so you know, I'm born and raised in Virginia, but my parents are from Southeast Georgia, and I spent a lot of time growing up down there. And so like I could turn on that Southern charm and twang in a heartbeat. Like I always said when we'd cross over the Savannah River, my Georgia accent would come back when I was a little kid. And I remember I remember my mom's best friend had these little twin girl daughters, and they called me teenage because of the way their Georgia accent was instead of TJ.
Okay.
And doing radio, I had to like get rid of a lot of my accent. So like, and but it's funny because I feel like I have a pretty flat U.S. accent, maybe a little bit of a Southern accent. But then I go places and they're like, "Wow, are you from the deep South?" Like I've got property in New Mexico now, and I would be like, "Are you from the deep South?"
So I got a
Yeah.
specific question from somebody about what's the best way to grow clear, and what I mean by that is not using any sort of chemicals. Is chemicals 100% necessary to simulate the environment of somewhere like, say, Jamaica?
No, no, not at all. It's I'll back up and remind me if I get off track but I think I'm gonna come back to it. But I'm gonna back up first, and it might take me a minute or two to get there. Um, whenever somebody first asks me to teach them how to grow, the first thing I tell somebody is buy yourself one of the more and this is how I was taught. I'm not saying it's the only way, it's the best way, whatever, but it's what worked for me and it's what's worked for anyone I've taught how to grow that was serious about it. Um, But what I first tell people when they come to me and ask me to grow, like even before I would even be willing to show them any of my plants or anything, is buy one of the books written by one of the reputable uh, cannabis cultivators throughout history. You know, pre-ending of prohibition, so I was taught through the Jorge Cervantes Grow Bible, and it's literally called the Grow Bible, an encyclopedia of like medical marijuana cultivation or some shit like that. And Jorge Cervantes, longtime cultivation expert for High Times magazine before High Times went stupid corporate and fired all of the really good people. Another good guy and another High Times guy for a long time, Kyle Cushman. I've used the Kyle Cushman chiropractic technique, and I would talk to people. I don't use it anymore just because I'm trying to get away from stressing out plants. But yeah, so get one of those books by somebody like that. Like I said, I prefer the Jorge Cervantes because that's what I go by. So if you call me with a problem, I say, okay, well, first I'm going to say, what did you read about in the fucking book? Because I'm not going to answer your question if you ain't read the fucking book yet.
How
And
military. Have you looked at the SOP? No? Then go look at the SOP.
I don't know. Maybe that's some Navy shit that's still stuck in me. I don't know.
My,
I think that's just me. That's just my like work ethic, and
no, because my
I'm
wife's
like
the same way. She's in charge of some people, and there's some lists, and she's like, "Have you looked at the lists? No? Well, it's over there."
and yeah, I'm like Red Foreman on that '70s show when it comes to bullshit. I don't take it. And my bullshit detector is very accurate.
So the Grow
So
Bible. Okay.
so so that's the first thing. I'm very serious about people who really want to know how to grow, and those books will tell you, you know, all of these different ways of cultivating, and you know what works best and what environments and such what's most efficient. I tended to like to use the term efficient when talking about cultivation because my efficiency is not your efficiency. And so once we have an, and I say, you don't even have to read it like you're going to get tested on it. Just be familiar with the book because I'm going to ask you what does it say in the fucking book if you call me with a question. And like I mean, but you can literally take this book, and this is everybody I've ever told to get the book. They ask me a stupid ass question, and I'm like, well, what does it say in the book? And I'll even go and get my book and I'll open to the page. I know exactly where it is. And I'll just be looking at it, waiting for them to say, and like, but you can literally take these books up to your plant and hold it up to the leaf and go like, yes, this is a calcium deficiency. Yes, this is a magnesium deficiency, or at least narrow it down to like two or three things without having to like send a sample off to a testing lab somewhere and figure out how to treat whatever you're looking at. So that's why I'm very, very hard on the book. And then second is, like I said, kind of the Cali way of learning is kind of getting a mentor, finding someone who's been doing it a long time, because weed is really, really fucking easy to grow. That's why it's called weed. It like I had a friend, we lost him last year, the year before. I think he was an Army veteran. But he went and got, I think, a graduate level degree in like plant sciences. But he was, and I think he grew up kind of in the corn belt somewhere. He was living in Colorado Springs when I knew him, and but he said he used to walk along some of the train tracks in the Midwest where the corn trains would run, because hemp would also grow in those cornfields, and it was like this landrace cultivar. So a landrace being a cultivar, or what most people commonly refer to as a strain of hemp that would have been cultivated like uh, cotton, soybean, wheat, corn pre World War II, or going up into World War II in the United States of America. And so what this buddy would do is he would walk those train tracks looking for these landrace strains that had blown, the seeds had gotten mixed in with corn harvest back then, and they would blow off, and so they just kept refertilizing themselves for generations and generations. And he said he found, and this is just growing like gravel beside the train tracks, bumfuck Iowa, but like he said, what because what we had done in the United States, and I think it's kind of a global thing too, is we had bred a lot of the really, really beneficial medicinal cannabinoids out of what we could assume as our medicinal and recreational, like full spectrum marijuana, with high THC levels, typically a little bit of CBD, and like maybe there might be some THCV, THCA left over once you combust. There might not all fully combust, and you get a little bit of THCA, and so on. So what he was trying to do was, at home he had like, I mean, like this was like right at the brink of legalization in Colorado. So we're talking like right around 2014, 2015 is when I met this cat. And he had in his like basement in his house like a full scale fucking lab, and he was like crossing all these different strains. And the reason I'm going into so much detail about this is you're asking about like what sort of medium to cultivate in, to say again that hemp plant's efficiency was different than my efficiency. And so, but and he what he would say, and he would show me pictures whenever we'd run into each other doing these legalization events and stuff, and like I mean, just some of the most beautiful like purples and oranges and reds and the buds and the flower, the leaves and stuff coming off of them, and like colors that I had never seen in cannabis plants before. And then he would breed those back into like the freaking high octane shit that we know and love, and but drawing out different and and the prettier your plant is, the more beneficial it's going to be. And this is I'm going to sidetrack and come back to this clone growing question again. I haven't forgotten. I'm working my way to it. And this is another beautiful thing is like this plant. And I also learned this working with psychedelics researchers. Is Dr. Eduardo Luis Luna, who's responsible for bringing ayahuasca out of the rainforest, and he was raised, I think, in Colombia, and now he has a retreat center in Brazil. But he was when he came out in like the 70s. I think he was supposed to be like a Catholic priest or something, but instead he decided to do college level research on like this substance that him and his like community had been raised on, basically, like, and but he said, talking about the plants that give us the chemical reactions that we call ayahuasca, which it's DMT, and I can't remember what the other psychedelic compound that comes out in it is, but what he said about these plants, because one of the things when you talk about legalization is you have to look at the ethics of it too. Like, how does this impact, especially like indigenous and native peoples, especially in South America, which is like, some of the poorest countries on the planet. How does this legalization impact a very, very important and sacred ritual process, rite of passage in their communities? And so that's kind of what he was talking about on that panel. But he said that Mother Ayahuasca, and he was also speaking of the plants, because it's like a vine and a tree that you like have to combine and boil to synthesize to get those two psychedelic compounds. And but he said Mother Ayahuasca was here for at least tens of thousands of years before we even walked this earth. And if this earth continues to exist after our species does, then she will continue to be here for tens of thousands and many more years. And like when he said that shit, like, and I'm getting goosebumps talking about it right now, because like that made it all click to me about these plant-based medicines. Is like, before there were humans, these plants have decided to adapt and grow in their environments and evolve, you know, at least tens of thousands of years before our species existed. So therefore, and so therefore there was some sort of other symbiotic relationship going on before we found it, because you watch deer in the wild, deer process cannabinoids without like having to have them cooked. See, we have to have them cooked in order to get the stony baloney THC effect. But deer will get fucked up eating the field. Like you got to keep deer out of your cannabis fields. And so I'm coming back around to this clean growing question. There are plenty of ways to grow without using chemicals. I would say probably the best way that I know of and would tell people to look into is living soil. So basically, what you do is you get either your soil or soilless medium, media, whatever you decide, and you mix all of these. It's not it's not scientifically organic or USDA organic, as I'm saying this, but organic material, as in material that will break down, that because like the Fox Farm Ocean Forest dirt, I can't remember what it says, but it says something like it's all organic material, but it also, like, it comes from like just the bottom of some waterbed somewhere. Like, it's not like USDA organic, but it is a very good. I wouldn't call it clean, but it's a cleaner of the major soils that most people in the United States have access to. Most people, it's funny. Uh, I live not too far from this place, this feed and seed store that I've been going to since I was as long as I can remember, at least 8 years old. I remember my dad having a garden behind our trailer, and but it's called Norfolk County Feed and Seed because this whole area used to be Norfolk County pre school integration, basically white flight cities. That's what Hampton Roads is, like Chesapeake, Virginia Beach, Suffolk. Uh, but and then like because it's like all these like kind of predominantly white cities surrounding a few majority black cities, and but it happened because of uh, the um, the forced integration in Norfolk in the '60s, and so then all these cities broke away from Norfolk County. But over here in Portsmouth is the feed and seed store. It's great because we have like this small town feed and seed store right in the middle of a million person metropolitan area that was here back when it was like, I mean, I used to think it was out in the country when we would go when I was a little kid, just because how you had to go to get there. Because this side of the interstate, like out towards Suffolk, wasn't here then. You had to like drive all the back roads over here. But yeah, and so but that's where I would always buy my growing soil, and he carried Fox Farm products. And years ago, the owner, he's a good old Southern Baptist boy, and I think his dad had it for a long time. And then when he retired from the guy who is now, when he retired from the shipyard or whatever, he reopened it or took it over from his dad. And it's like I said, it's like probably the only feed and seed store proper like in that part of Hampton Roads. Because a lot of the like little nurseries and stuff have closed up over the last like 5 or so years. Just these big box stores eating them up and shit. But he's still showing up, and so I get my Fox Farm dirts there. And because Fox Farm, I tell people it's the easiest way to grow weed. Like you can just add water and a couple extra things, but it's what we call a hot soil. So it does have nutrients and fertilizers already in it. But you can, like I said, mix your own soils, or you can even use soilless media like rock wool. But rock wool, you're going to have to add some sort of nutrients to. But you can get what they say are completely organic. But again, like I said, even my use, even though it was a different use of the term from the USDA term organic, the USDA term organic, like I like that you asked about clean growing media as opposed to like organic or something. But a lot of stuff is marketed as organic in the United States. But I would say read the label and actually dig even deeper and see who the parent company is. Because with a lot of legalization in the United States, a lot of these smaller cultivation companies that have been around for decades and were just, mom and pop are now getting bought up by the Bayer Pharmaceutical or Bayer Chemical, I guess is that branch, or Dow or Monsanto's, and being marketed exactly how they
Right,
have
right,
for
right.
decades. But yeah, so do pay attention to that kind of stuff. But yeah, I will say what I have recently switched to is I personally swear by right now. And like I said, I used Fox Farm Ocean Forest was like the first thing I learned to grow in. And then you just I've always used a two-part fertilizer. So you got like an A part and a B part. And you just kind of measure those out into your water, and then you have a couple extra things you might add to kind of that's what separates like just growing weed to growing like high quality medicinal grade ganja. And with like terms like ganja and sensimilla being like high quality, just sugary, crystallized,
Seedless.
seedless,
Yes.
just ooey gooey goodness. And so yeah, so I started out using the Oceans Forest, and I'll tell anybody that wants to learn to grow to start out with a product similar to that. It just depends on where you are in the world, what you have available. Like you can use some of the stuff you get at the big box stores, but it's not gonna work right for you most likely. I have heard people having success with it, but I wouldn't do it. I don't recommend it. But if that's all you have access to, go for it. And then yeah, so I started with the ocean forest. During the pandemic, at the beginning of the pandemic, he ran. I know. I was talking about the old Southern Baptist owner of the Feed the Seed store. So this was years before we legalized here in Virginia, and I'm in there asking him because he didn't have any out on the shelf, and I asked if he had any in back stock because I normally keep it out in the warehouse or whatever. Anyway, just a few bags on the shelves, and he said, I don't get it. Out of all the stuff I sell here, this is like one of my top selling products. I'm like, dude, you have a feed and seed store right in the middle of Portsmouth, Virginia, and you sell Fox Farm products. And back then I knew I couldn't like break the news to him as to why it was a
Right,
good old
right,
Southern
right.
Baptist boy. I would have broken his heart because he would have probably gone and turned himself into the Portsmouth
Yeah,
Police
yeah. He's
Department.
like, the only thing I ever did in my entire life was sell Coca Cola and kill Nazis.
So then fast forward to like right after we legalized, and I go up to him right after the law passes in Virginia. And I say, Tommy, I guess I can come clean and tell you this is why I've been buying all that Fox Farm dirt from you and showing pictures of my buds. And then he gave me a good old southern long story about a friend of his who was trying to get him to diagnose a plant problem for him back in the like 80s or something. But same thing. He knew he was a good old Southern Baptist boy. He didn't want to get him involved in even looking at
Right,
marijuana.
right, right. I bet he's thankful that he's
Oh
like,
man.
man, I'm really glad I decided to pick this product up because it's flying off the shelves.
But yeah, so then at the beginning of the pandemic, Fox Farm was having a problem keeping up with demand because they do make their own products now, but it is one of the larger of the company, and they might be one of the ones that's owned by one of the big ones now too. But so he ran out of that for a while, and this lady had come in, like for her garden, wanted some really, really nice, high quality garden soil, but wasn't too expensive. And so he got another Fox Farm line called Lucky Dog, but he bought a whole pallet. He got a deal on these big, huge ass bales of it. And she said if he got it in, she'd buy half the pallet. So he just ordered the whole pallet like he had to. And then the pandemic hit, like she couldn't afford to buy what she was going to buy then, understandable. So he knew I bought so much fucking Fox Farm turtle. He's like, hey, I'll give you a good deal on this stuff if you want to try it out. And so I switched to the Lucky Dog for a while. And then I would go back and forth between that and the Fox Farm Strawberry Fields. And I really like the Strawberry Fields. But one of the things I don't like about Fox Farm products, and it's funny because I was actually watching a YouTube video this morning. This gardening guy, I like gardening too. Go figure. But my dad was a Georgia farm boy before I moved up to Virginia, so I
Right.
think it's in my blood. But I was watching, this like New Jersey homesteader dude on YouTube this morning talking about how he gets his seedlings ready. And this is kind of pertinent, and it's kind of because I was like, oh man, it's kind of a cheesy video like most of the videos he makes, but they have some good information to them. But he actually made a sifter because he was sifting Fox Farm dirt to get the large chunks out. That's my one main complaint about all of the Fox Farm products is, and I'll use the words dirt and soil interchangeably for any of you fucking purist motherfuckers out there.
I think we'll be all right.
Um, uh, but But and like the Fox Farm typically has big chunks of organic material, such as like wood chips or whatever, still in it. And so, with legalization, full legalization, even though it's not really full legalization here in Virginia, a grow store opened up over here on my side of. I'm in Chesapeake, but he's in Portsmouth, and he carries a lot of the like specialty cultivation soils, and I had been looking at changing stuff up, and it's good to change up your grow situation every so often, and try something different, see if it gives you better results. And there's this company called Roots Organic off of the
Hmm.
West Coast somewhere, and again, like you got to think about this. So when these small mom and pop stores carry these like really high end quality products, like especially something like soil, like they're just paying to ship a pallet of fucking dirt across the United States of America.
Yeah.
And granted, this is actually cocoa coir. It's like 60% cocoa coir, and like it's a whole bunch of other shit than just dirt. That's why it's so expensive. But yeah, so I've switched recently. Actually, my most recent harvest was the first one. I had like half of it was grown in Fox Farm strawberry fields, and the other half was grown in Roots Organic 707 soil. Is what I'm currently using. And I did for a long time. One of my buddies in Michigan, who's a Coast Guard veteran, he taught me a lot about cultivation. He swore by the Psycho Nutrients Platinum line of nutrients. And I will still tell people, like, if you're looking for something good, if they're still on the market, use them. But I used them with a couple of advanced nutrients products over the last few years. And when I made this soil switch, I also decided to switch to using only advanced nutrients products. Some of the research I was reading on them, so they now have this, and it's probably just a marketing gimmick, but it could be true because they are like one of the best nutrient lines on the market, like according to professional cultivators' choices and use nutrient use. They say they have what it's called perfect pH. So one of the biggest problems a lot of people have with cultivation is the pH of their water. Luckily, my wife works in water quality. She does like genetic analysis of pathogens in wastewater, but still has a basic understanding of water quality to do her job. And like, so like, I know about what our water quality is because when we get that little mail thing in the mail every year that tells us, she actually reads it instead of tossing it in the recycling or trash. Because like it has information like that she uses on a day-to-day basis at work too, but it also tells us what our water is.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like I know I tested my water when we first moved into this house, and we have like the city of Chesapeake has pretty decent tap water. So
Yeah.
I'm not too terrible. I've never pH'd my water, but I do know that that's one of the biggest problems a lot of new cultivators have, especially if you're on like well water or you're in an area that has just really hard water coming off of the tap. But you don't necessarily have to get these like fancy ass reverse osmosis systems and stuff. They're nice, but I mean, it's not environmentally friendly. Like you're using 3 gallons of water to pour 1 gallon of water on a plant. Basically, it may be more efficient. I don't know, but that's how reverse osmosis has been for a long time. But like so this advanced nutrients line, like they call it, they say it's perfect pH. So you add the part A and B first, add all of your water, and it's supposed to like give you the right pH range
Hmm.
for proper nutrient intake uptake. And yeah, and like I said, advanced nutrients is one of the more preferred brands lines of nutrient, and they make a like, so I just use their uh I use the part A part, like one is like a connoisseur grow, connoisseur bloom, I think is what they're called. And then But then like they have like an all cocoa version because apparently cocoa depletes your magnesium in your nutrients and your magnesium uptake of the
Huh.
plant, and that's one of the things you have to worry about when you want to separate growing weed from ganja. So yeah, like so that's why like there's a different cocoa line. Then they have what would be called like the USDA organic line, to where it's supposed to be it's not necessarily chemical free. However, it's certain chemicals that the USDA has deemed organic, and mostly in the sense that they don't stay in the soil longer or in the plant longer than a certain amount of time. And the kind of the response to that I've always heard, in like what you choose to use your nutrients or whatever, is if you do a proper flush at the end of your cultivation, or you just do it with clean water for 2 to 3 weeks right before your harvest, then you get, because and I just recently saw a YouTube video where a plant scientist and he's both a plant scientist and like electronics engineer, and but he makes like the testing equipment to test cannabis, like
Hmm.
the plants, like down on the like molecular level and shit. And then he teaches like cannabis plant science at a college level. I'll send
Interesting.
remind me to send you a link to the video. But it was a video like plant science college professor plant scientist bust 10 cannabis growing myths. And one of the things that he was talking about was, does a flush really do anything? And he says that scientifically, no, it doesn't. But he said you could put, like, looking at the science of like taste and flavors, you can always have different panels of 10 different people, and you're most likely gonna very rarely get any two similar tastes, like people comparing tastes a lot, just because like so it's hard to use anecdotal evidence in this situation. But the science actually says that flushing doesn't matter as long as you're not overusing nutrients to begin with, which is another problem a lot of people think they have to do in cannabis cultivation, is use a lot of nutrient. It's not that. It's a science, and you just have to figure out where your plants are happy. And yeah, and you just play with it, and like I say, you just start off and realize that you're not going to be perfect. Even professional cultivators, they typically say that don't expect it to break even on whatever you've invested in cultivating cannabis until at least your third full successful harvest. And so like, and for a new cultivator, that could be a year and a half, possibly, depending on how quickly you go. I mean, I try and have perpetual harvest indoor when it's not too hot. I'm trying to harvest once a month. I like really fresh cannabis. It's very tasty, and that's and then also the flavors dictate the medicinal
Hmm.
aspect of it. The smells dictate the medicinal aspects of it. I just harvested some stuff called lemon freeze pop, and it smells like a lemon slushy on a summer afternoon. I mean, like, it makes me just want to eat like some lemon cream slushy on the Virginia Beach boardwalk. And I don't like doing shit like that, but that's what that smell reminds
Right,
me of,
right.
Yeah, and then the other one that I just harvested was it's like so breeders will sometimes just kind of see what they can do, and they'll make like a limited run of seeds or whatever. And so my partner buddy, I taught how to grow, and lives not too far from me, and we actually graduated high school together and then reconnected. He just hit me up one day. He's like, hey, you mind teaching me how to grow? I'm like, sure. He's like, 10 minutes up the street from me. And so yeah, we kind of did that Cali way thing, and we still have to go into this day, a couple of years later. But but yeah, like it's all about, just and taking the knowledge that you learn, because another thing for me is tincture. That's why I'm drinking this tea. Is it's got Everclear based tincture in it. For those outside of the U.S., Everclear is a grain alcohol. I guess grappa is very similar in Italy. I don't know what other countries grain alcohols. Poland and is potato vodka. I drank a lot of that. A lot of homemade potato vodka in Poland.
So
But
to
yeah, like so like Everclear is what 95% grain alcohol, I believe it is, and it just strips everything off, because when you're looking for good medicine, you don't necessarily want all that green plant material
no.
that's got chlorophyll in it, and chlorophyll is not necessarily bad for you, but it doesn't taste as appealing, doesn't smell as appealing. That's why when you get like some fucking dirt weed, it smells like grass. That's chlorophyll. More like chlorophyll.
Yeah, yeah, you beat me to it, really. So to recap,
but yeah.
hold on a second. So just to recap, so we got the Grower's Bible that will give us all the answers we need when it comes to lights, when it comes to size of growing equipment. We have
Oh
Fox
yeah.
Farm soil. That's going to be your recommendation, and
For a
nutrients
beginner, yeah.
and nutrients. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it seems that those three basic elements kind of just seem to be the main thing. And like you said, if you have questions, there's the Bible.
Yeah, yeah, and then once you get into it, it's all about airflow and circulation. That's been, I don't have air conditioning in the space that I grow in. So you heard me say earlier that when it's not too hot, I try and have a perpetual harvest, but because like once it gets probably about early June, I'm gonna have to shut it down until about October indoors, but luckily, there's outdoors too during that time, and the sun is free energy. But like so in my space, I have to worry about air circulation. Like it's like I don't know, it's probably like almost 80 degrees here today outside, and so my grow closet is pretty close to that, because the ambient temperature of that room is about 10 degrees warmer than the ambient temperature of the house. So yeah, like temperature and airflow are going to be the next two most important things, because those control things like moisture, pests. Because like you can't get rid of fungus gnats. Fungus gnats just happen when you have plants. It's a fact of life, but it's how do you live with them and keep the population low. Oh, that's that. So I'm gonna go in talking about fungus gnats. I spent all of last year with spider mite infestation in my grow closet, which is one of the worst pests to deal with. And my partner actually, he does one of his jobs is landscaping, which is one of the reasons he wanted to learn to cultivate cannabis, because he likes playing with plants. Yeah, but so last year when he was trying to find a good, clean pest control product, because this is where I'm very picky. What I like when I'm doing pest control, because I have like I mean, even though I'm indoors, I've got chickens in my backyard. I could go in my cannabis closet and then go feed my chickens, and I even think about it. So I want to make sure, and I've got dogs running around the house. So yeah, I want to make sure that what I use on my can, that it's safe for me to consume too. So I had sworn by this one product for a long time, but it just wasn't cutting it. And so my buddy found this stuff called Grow Safe, and it's like a biopesticide and fungicide. And I got rid of a really bad spider mite infestation following the directions on the back of that. And anytime I see any type of signs of any bugs other than my few fungus gnats that I'm willing to live with, I make sure. And I do preventative spraying with that stuff too. And It's corn and soy oil based. Apparently, bugs don't like corn and soy. I don't know if
Huh.
it's like coming from all these like Monsanto products that have all those pesticides and shit already in them, or what. But it's supposed to be safe and clean. And yeah, but it, like yeah, like but no, it's like so yeah, like I do that if people want recommendations on shit to use, that's the shit that I swear by to keep the bugs and fungus away. And like I said, you just gotta learn to live with fungus gnats if you're gonna have plants. And then yeah, outdoor growing. Since Virginia, I'd never grown outdoors until Virginia legalized. I don't know why. I think I may have tried like a couple of years before Virginia legalized, but I don't know. Growing indoors, it's to me, it's easier in a sense. I don't know. Outdoor plants get really fucking big, take a lot more management, but indoor you can kind of control everything because it's a controlled environment. And but yeah, like the last couple, so I grew when tried growing outdoors when Virginia legalized, got a decent little amount. And then last year was the second year I grew outdoors. And then this Christmas, I bought a greenhouse that I'm in the process of putting up. Yeah, like I would say, just depends. That just depends on your environment.
Yeah, I
I
mean, this was
Yeah, but
absolutely priceless when it came to information for everybody who's interested.
yeah, no, I tried to cover all the bases because like outdoors, again, you choose what kind of soil you use. I'm gonna grow in a greenhouse. I'm gonna use, I'm probably just because it's what I have on hand, gonna use that 707 shit, even though it's expensive as shit
Mm-hmm.
to use. Like, I'm trying to grow. I've been given a bunch of autoflower seeds. Find people to give you seeds to. Try not unless you're looking for a very 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 specific thing. Like I don't directly. I've never directly paid for seeds before, and I've been growing for at least 10 years. I think it is. Yeah, like people always have excess seeds, clones. Like I said, unless I mean, like just don't get ripped off over it. I see people get ripped off all the time. Oh, I found these seeds that were coming out of Amsterdam. Said they were some like '97 OG Kush. Yeah, nah, that motherfucker just took our money.
Yeah, it looks like the
And
cardboard weed we used to get that looks like it was stepped all over before it got to you.
yeah. So yeah, but yeah, man, and yeah, that's no, I was somebody was asking me about some weed I have earlier today, and I went in this much detail about that with them. I'm like, oh, sorry if I'm getting too
You're
scientific
getting
about
warmed
it.
up
It's
for the
just something I
show.
like to talk about.
Well, man,
Got French fried taters, mashed taters,
biscuits and
corn
mustard. Mm.
taters.
Well, I think
Oh,
this
you
is.
said something about my cup, my mug
Oh
earlier.
yeah, yeah.
So
What?
this, my wife and I got married in Las Vegas when I got back from my first deployment, and a good friend of mine, I met him through weed legalization shit here in Virginia. He was living in Richmond at the time, but he was running like the local Richmond normal chapter, National Organization for Reformation or Reforming Marijuana
Yeah,
Laws in the
yeah,
United
yeah.
States, and he was like the Richmond chapter leader when I was working on the medical stuff in the state. We became real good friends, and 2021 was our 20th anniversary, wedding anniversary, and with like stimulus checks and tax refund and shit, we were able to afford to go out like all out to Vegas for a week and like celebrate our anniversary. So like my buddy was like, man, I got to bring Pete something back from Vegas, and so like saw this and just one of those fucking kitschy ass uh, gift shops. And I was like, oh my God. And it was funny because I was just down at his house a couple of days ago and I saw his mug sitting out on the counter. I'm like, yeah, that's why I got it for him because I
And
knew
that
he'd use it.
and that's why he's my best bud. Yeah, yeah. It's
Right.
very
Yeah.
circular.
Yeah.
It makes sense. It's almost
Yeah.
it's so literal. Uh, I guess this is the time where if you want to put any plugs out there, any websites, any addresses for anybody to check your music out or to check out any of your old episodes of the Jivin and Drivin show.
Shit, I don't even know if that even lives anywhere anymore. Yeah, I don't know if any of my old radio shows live anywhere anymore. I There might be if you maybe search TJ the DJ Jivin and Driving show. That's Jivin and then N and then Drivin, the hillbilly spelling of it. Drop the G's and all the excess letters and the letters you don't need to pronounce, basically, to get your point across.
Excess
Uh,
letters.
um, remember when Dwight Schrute came up? I think it was Dwight came up with that language on The Office that he was trying to. No, it was Kevin on The Office. He was trying to talk more efficiently, so he was using less words.
No shit. No. I don't remember that episode.
It's one of my favorite ones because Kevin's already dumb as shit, but then he's like talking even dumber, and it's hilarious. But yeah, so yeah, but if so, archive.org. I know there might be some clips of like me, I think I asked when Hank 3 was in town. Or I did an interview with him and I couldn't air it on the radio, but I asked him a question about weed and shit. I can't remember what year that was. That's on archive. We spent all this time talking about weed. I've said a little bit about the radio show, but also I was, sound guy for years around here. Archive.org has probably one of my favorite shows that I've ever mixed, Larry Keel and Natural Bridge. That's also on my page. I'll try to get you a link to that if I can figure out how to find it again.
Yeah.
And yeah, so there's some shit up on there, but it's not much substance. And then when I was at ODU, like 2016, 2017, there might be some stuff on the WODU webpage from. I did a radio show there called Bullying the Jukebox. Which is the title of a Bouncing Soul song. It's one of the greatest songs ever written. It makes me think of nights hanging out, with you. And but basically, they talk about how, the punk thing to do is to go into a bar and just put like $40 worth of money in and play whatever the hell you want to listen to, regardless of who's in the bar. And that's kind of always been my mentality of playing music on the radio is I'm going to play whatever the hell I want to hear on the radio because I know my taste in music is good.
I mean, I specifically enjoyed listening to the Drivin and Drivin show, and we'd fucking Ernest Tubb jokes for like the Pete Mitchell, and he would take a fucking solo.
Oh yeah.
Like how many times when you and I were partying, we would literally say the lines Pete Mitchell, and then drink something and shortly forget how the rest of the night went.
Oh yeah, it was funny. I became good friends with the guys in the 2 Time and 3. As they were on their way up, coming out of a couple of them graduated out of Berkeley in Boston, and then moved to Austin, and then Eric, tragically killed way too young, but like Tap House was one of their favorite places to play. Once we made that connection, it was every like 3 to 6 months if they could make the East Coast, they were on the East Coast. But with Shane Keel, their bass player, same thing. Like man, we had some times where we were wild and in Portsmouth, and after a show, like 4 o'clock in the morning, finding the only 24 hours McDonald's around and trying to get something to soak up all that booze. And but that's and to me that's what music is about. It's about like making these connections. Like like the two of us, we have so many stories that we tell amongst each other that like nobody else could ever hear, and I'm like that, having had a radio show and been a sound guy for so long. I'm like that with pretty much every local musician that played on a regular basis around here that I worked with back then. But it's interesting because you build this sense of camaraderie through the music, and with us it was a little bit different because I had just gotten out of the Navy and you were I think about halfway through the Navy when we first met, and so yeah, and then we just kind of connect. I always remember going to those shitty shipmate parties of yours. You're like,
Oh my God.
TJ, come help me with this.
Just I
He's like,
think
you're the
that
only one I know that can understand what I'm putting up with these motherfuckers, but I have to go or they're shit on me at work.
it's like I have to go to work, but I need a hillbilly whisperer to take care of this business while I'm gone. And
Oh gosh,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. No, I would.
there was nights
No,
that
those
I
those
would come
those.
in from work and like there was broken bottles on the sidewalk and like there was like a birthday cake in my laundry. Like, it's just like we could literally have a podcast just strictly on like the tap house and then things that happened after the tap house.
I mean, I don't remember a lot of it, and
Yeah,
I'm
me too.
probably sure that's a good thing. But
Yeah.
and we talk about this stuff adoringly and jokingly now, but also like I'm glad I don't do that anymore.
Oh
I'm
yeah.
glad I'm not
Same.
like that
Yeah. Same
anymore.
here.
It's
I have my time in the
and I
sun.
don't I don't encourage that kind of behavior when you're young. Enjoy yourself, but
Responsibly.
remember you get old. You hopefully get old, and yeah. So other plugs that I might have. Well, of course, Dismal Swamp Ditchgrass Project has coming up Sunday. What is like? I think it's the Big Pink at Victoria Station in Hampton, Virginia. It's a bluegrass gospel brunch happening from 11 to 2. We're playing a couple sets. I think this group called the Harris Creekers from around here playing a couple sets. Just got or one. I think they got one set. We got two sets, and yeah, just kind of laid back. It's interesting, I always talk to people about this. Being so passionate about music and stuff. So like I am not at all a religious person. I actually have a lot of trauma from U.S. religion, and
Yeah.
but damn, if a good gospel song won't bring me to my feet or my knees, whichever it needs to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And kind of like I don't drink like I used to anymore. But goddamn, if I don't like to listen to a good drinking song still.
I
I've married my high school sweetheart, but I still love a good heartbreak song.
yeah. 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 We have we have the
So
entire tiki bar situation going on here, but we drink responsibly.
yeah, that's us. Yeah, like during the pandemic, I decided that I wanted to have the stuff on hand to make any drink I ever want to have. Some of the bottles I bought when I first made that decision are probably still sitting up there with only a shot or two poured out of them. Yeah, same way around our house. We and like more than one or two for me now. I accidentally went and hung out with an old friend not too long ago, and I was just we were around a bonfire, and I was just pouring out of a bottle of
That's when it
Buffalo
happens.
Trace,
That's
in the dark, just topping it off with some Dr. Pepper, and then I felt like shit the next day, and I finally looked at. I'm like, damn, I drank half of that bottle. I don't remember the last time I drank that much alcohol. It was like it's like man, yeah. But used to some of those those tap house nights. There was Two Time and Three was one of those bands. They would order an extra fifth of real bourbon for me and the band because we would blow through it. And yeah, like, but I mean, it was what the crowd wanted. It was what the crowd wanted.
One of the things that
I mean,
that I love to talk about with like people like you and my friends that are kind of aging punk rockers and stuff is like just how hard we used to get down, and then once you get to that age where you're like, okay, I had my time in the sun, and then sort of having this like, it's okay to step away from the party, kids, talk like you can still party, but you don't have to party like that. But everyone's got to make their own
yeah, yeah.
decisions. Everyone has to live their own
E-
lives.
Yeah, yeah. Just realize if you get old before you die, it might catch up with you. But it is fun. It is fun sometimes. And yeah, but what else do I want? I think the two of us should talk a little bit about bass. All that bass. Who who what bass players shaped you? Because like when we first met each other, I don't think you were playing bass, at least upright bass at that point. So like
No.
what bass players shaped your playing at? Because like I was playing a lot of the music you were listening to at the time, so I want to hear what bass players shaped you kind of transitioning into that phase coming out of the Navy and all.
Well, I when it comes to upright bass, I have my heroes that are your typical, I guess, old dead bass heroes like Willie Dixon and Louis Vola, who played with Django Reinhardt, and Pops Foster, who played with Sidney Bechet. But then there's the living players that I think are amazing, like Georgie Stiepovich and Nick Debichet, Ryan Gould, Thomas Loriu, Kevin Smith, uh, just there, Jimmy Sutton. There's just a myriad of these amazing bass players who learned how to interpret the playing of the past, bring it to their modern, I suppose, their modern medium, and a lot of them are really just open to to answering questions if you have them. And that really was a big thing for me, was finding these players who played in the styles of the people that I enjoyed listening to, and asking one or two questions here or there, not enough to bother them, but just enough to what the stuff that I couldn't pick up what was happening, kind of get inside their mind a little bit. And yeah, also the Pete Turland video, that that was just absolutely revolutionary when it came to learning the upright bass. And then the pillow trick that Jeff Fireball taught me. So mix all that up, and I suppose that gives you the answer you're looking for. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's funny you mentioned George. Were you there the first time I played the Tap House? This is the first. I mean, he didn't even really speak much English at that point.
No, I got to see him with Fish Tank Ensemble when I lived in Colorado.
Oh shit! So I got to bring him to the Tap House, like playing bass for Deke,
Oh,
and like
killer!
Deke was basically talking for him at this point because like he his English. I mean, it was good, but he didn't think it was good, you know. And yeah, and like basically every conversation started with, "I came to the U.S. because I was tired of playing symphony bass
Yeah,
and wanted to learn rockabilly and hillbilly bass."
yeah,
And
yeah,
he just came to the US and started touring. I'm like, that is a road dog right there. And then
yeah,
like the fact that he's a classically trained bassist. And like we had him on this tiny ass stage at the tap house and just like going off.
yeah.
And yeah,
He's such a nice guy
yeah,
too.
he's definitely yeah. And yeah, no, we had, I think he came through like that tour, and then there was like the following, because Deke was coming through about every 6 months at that point too.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I got started in booking. Was I was away in school for the Navy. I may have just start or was about to start my radio show, just started or something. And that was like my last year in the Navy. I was away for school, and while I was away for school, I was out in just north of Chicago for school, so I spent a lot of time down in Chicago. and Deke Dickerson had played some joint in Norfolk, and my friends from the ship, actually, he was like the only friend that I really hung out with from the ship because he was like an old greaser dude. So we were into a lot of music together. We had a band together on the ship. But he, while I was in Chicago, he's like, yo, this dude, Deke Dickerson, just came through and played Norfolk, man. You should see if he's coming to Chicago anytime. And sure enough, he was on tour opening up for the Drive-By Truckers, playing this small Irish pub, held maybe 200 people in the middle of Chicago. And it was the night Johnny Cash died. And so both bands, half their sets were fucking Johnny Cash covers. But like when I saw Deke, I was like, I'm bringing this dude to Norfolk. And that's how I started booking, was I wanted to bring Deke Dickerson back to Norfolk. And I don't know how long, 6 months, a year, maybe, finally. But first, we accidentally booked the Red Elvises first. That was 6 months after we accidentally booked them. They were headlining Live Aid in Moscow.
Yeah.
They played for like food and gas money at the tap house.
Yeah, I think I remember that gig. And then I caught when Deke was there and he had, you brought the Modern Sounds with him as well. And then the Modern Sounds was his backup band. He had Joel Patterson, Alex Hall, and Bo Sample as his backup band. And that was an amazing gig.
Deke's always had great Smoking a Joe out of Cleveland. I can't remember his last name. But I think he's like a college like engineering professor or something.
Oh,
And
Joe
Deke
Tritchler.
convinced him. Yeah. And Deke convinced him to go out on the road playing guitar with him for a couple of tours. So I got to see him come to the tap house. But going back talking about bassist, what's his name from Squirrel Nut Zippers? Oh God, I can't remember his name now. I don't want to talk about him. But I had him on the stage at the tap house with Dexter Romweber and the New Romans. Do you remember that project? It was like Dexter's like 9-piece
Yeah, he had the full
orchestration,
horns and
full like
everything. God, it was so good.
full horns, 3-piece female backing,
Dude,
gospel harmony.
I did an episode with Johnny Love. I think it was like episode 3, maybe 4, here on the podcast, and we brought up Dexter Romweber. For some reason, there's like, I think there was another person too. Like Dexter Romweber is the one artist that keeps popping up on this podcast.
Well, he's coming. I can't remember. It might be like Southern Culture on the Skids, and there's this place. I don't know if it was
Shack Shakers. It's going.
I don't know if
it's going to be.
Oh yeah, Dex, Shack Shakers. That's
it's going to be Dex with Shack Shakers, and Thomas Laurier is playing bass for Shack Shakers.
Yeah. So yeah, and I'm still up in the air about going. I'd like to see JD. I haven't seen JD. I was driving cross country a couple of years ago and happened to be driving past Paducah, and me and JD just missed each other by about 30 minutes. I was just 30 minutes too far away to turn around and go back and hang out with him, and he just, because he lives out in the middle of nowhere, he just missed my call. But yeah, he called me right back. He's like, because I probably hadn't seen him since. Oh God, they were on tour with oh gosh, what's his name? Pokey Lafarge. They were on tour with Pokey Lafarge and played the Addicts Theater. And I didn't realize, I knew Pokey was playing, but I didn't realize the Shack Shakers were on tour with him. And I was working at the tap house that night, like in the kitchen or something. And then I knew the Rilo crew and all those folk were over there, and they were coming back after the show. And then I see like the Shack Shakers walk through the door with Pokey and the crew, and I'm like, wow. And like it was like some really like it was like a pretty decent like Cure cover band playing at the tap house that night too. And like so I'm like just standing there with like one of my bass heroes, Mark Robertson, and like just kind of enjoying, we both just got off of work and we're enjoying a cold beer at a dive bar watching a Cure cover band together. I mean,
yeah,
life is okay at that point.
I got to do an episode with Mark here, and I couldn't name him in my list of bass heroes because I already did a podcast with him. I mean, you can't step on his nuts too much.
Well, I said when I first got my VA disability approved, I bought my dream bass rig, which is just the Ampeg 810 touring cabinet, and like I mean that's just every bassist needs to have one. Or well, now everything's fucking emulated, but I still would pull that 810 cabinet out in a heartbeat, especially if the room's big enough for it.
Yeah, yeah.
But because you can't get. I mean, yeah, with the emulators going through a nice PA, you can get close to that sound. Me and Pete Anderson had that conversation about like because he was like road testing like line six spider amps a couple times when I worked with him. But yeah, like I feel like I don't know, maybe it's just me being an old curmudgeon that nothing's gonna beat the sound of that. The bands that I love and still go see live, they still have that 810 cabinet standing on stage, so I had to buy my 810 cabinet. And then since I got in a big ass cabinet, I'm like, I'll get a digital head for it. I'll make up somewhere for all that size and weight. And my dream bass it has always been since he released it the Matt Freeman from Rancid, 1970s hybrid TJ bass,
Mm-hmm.
basically,
Yeah.
because he pieced his bass together over the years in Rancid, and he's my all-time favorite bass player. So like I was like, yeah, that's the sound I want from the instrument itself. Like, oh man, like it's got brass everything on it, so that thing just fucking rings, and it was affordable. Like that was the thing. Like it's a signature bass from my favorite bassist that was affordable. But talking about Mark, that's why I said this story. Talking about Mark, he's the only person that I would buy any other amp from now. Well, I did buy when I got the upright and knew I was going to be playing bluegrass. I bought an Ampeg 210, which is just the little premature baby of my big cabinet. But you got to have some sort of stage monitor.
I always just like 'cause I had that Green Boy cabinet that Mark built for me back when he was.
Yeah, that's what I want.
He doesn't
Yeah,
build
like
anymore.
because his
He doesn't build
outside of
anymore.
outside of like that bouncing souls tone, like that like mid to late '90s punk rock bass tone with the like heavy compression, just making it drive to the pissing point. Mark's tone is like one of my favorite fucking tones I've ever heard of bass, and he
Hmm.
put it in those Green Boy cabinets.
Yeah, he doesn't make them anymore.
I know.
It's a damn shame, but I mean, you can always find them for sale. Some somebody's for some reason selling them, even though they're one of the most amazing pieces of equipment I've ever played through. You literally just have to put a kick drum mic on it, and that's it. Like no
Yeah, yeah.
DI, no fucking nothing. You just a kick drum mic, done. Like
Well, that's like the guy floating above my head right there, Brian Ritchie. When he found that Music Man that he plays, or Music Man or Yamaha, I can't remember which it is. I think they're both the same company at that point or some point or whatever. But when he bought that bass, it's like a bass that like there were only like 400 made of or something, and most of them they were so crappy had been destroyed and thrown away. So he eventually when Violent Femmes got big enough, he just bought every single one he
yeah,
could and
yeah.
gave them to his
He's not.
luthier
He's
and
one.
said, "Hold on to these for parts and new basses for me."
He's
And
one.
so that's why he's always had that consistent bass tone. But he's one of the ones that I try and play a lot like when I'm playing bass. And his philosophy that I really stick to is I like to find the highest note in the chord and the lowest note in the chord, start at the lowest note and play as many notes as I can to get to the highest note of the chord. And so sometimes when I'm playing bass, I like to play like that. And if you listen to his bass playing, you understand what he's saying if you just pay attention to him and think about that. And then since I've been playing upright a lot, even though he's not an upright bass player, and we had this conversation about how he is not an upright bass player when he was asked to play upright bass for 2 nights with Chick Corea in his like 2 week stand at his 80th birthday party at the Blue Note. Victor Wooten told me that or well, this is kind of something that's out there, but we got to talking about it. It's you find it in any Victor Wooten video about like how easy it is to play the bass, especially a fretless bass. Is in every single chord there are 12 tones, and you're never any more than half a tone away from the right note. And if you don't have any frets, you can fix it. And that like when Victor, like when those words came out of Victor's mouth, from having like I've had one conversation. He played with the symphony a few years ago here, and good friend of mine, what was the principal bassist in the symphony. Actually, I met him through weed legalization stuff too.
Oh yeah.
But he still plays with the symphony, but he stepped back to let his stand partner, who has a family, get a better paycheck and be the principal bassist. And my buddy's getting older and closer to retirement. But Scott, he organized the hangout with Victor Wooten, and like so when they were leaving, he's like, "Hey TJ, I know you want to come hang with Victor. Come on up here." And so I got to spend like 3 hours picking Victor Wooten's brain, which was something I'll hopefully remember until the day I die. But yeah, and yeah, between Brian Ritchie and Victor Wooten, that's how I try to play bass, somewhere in there. And like I said, my sound, I'm a big fan of just that kind of '90s. Epitaph Records bass sound on electric bass. But that's when I started playing bass too. Like I'd just sit in my room for fucking hours on end with the little shitty bass my mom thought she was cool getting for me. But like every fret buzzed, and and what was this, like a Gorilla brand amp. I don't even know where she found this shit. I'd never even heard of this.
Probably
But
still
hey, I
can't
could
find
play
it to
bass
this
in my
day.
room. But yeah, yeah, no, and I mean, I don't know. I have fun playing bass. I'm a pocket bass player. Like we were talking towards the beginning. You've got those bass players that like to get all like Mingus with it and shit. But and that's cool. I love Charles Mingus. Like I could sit here for hours and listen to him. But at the same time, what I like to play is I'm a pocket bass player that I'm just gonna give you a strict dun 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 beat, and
Follow the
like maybe throw a
changes.
little walk in there to tell you when we're
Yeah.
changing chords.
Yep.
And but other than that, like unless like because the only place I'm gonna play any fancier, and I don't even feel like it's fancier, but it's my favorite style of bass to play is like ska and roots reggae bass. I get it because that's what I cut my teeth on, but it's also fun bass style to play because it's where the bass is playing the lead versus having to sit back there and just play on the one and
Well,
the two.
yeah, you can really learn your arpeggios playing that kind of stuff, which actually
Yeah,
comes in really
yeah,
cool for swing too, because you're following the
right.
changes and still arpeggiating at the same time. Well, dude,
Yeah, yes.
thank you so much for coming on.
Cool, cool. Well, I appreciate you inviting me, and yeah, my band. I mean, like I said, Dismal Swamp Ditchgrass Project. We're playing in Hampton a week from today, which is Sunday, March 12th. Was the Big Pink at Victorian Station. Their bluegrass gospel brunch along with the Harris Creekers. You can go on Facebook. We've got Dismal Swamp Ditch Grass Project, Facebook. Just type all that mouthful in. We've got an Instagram. Facebook tends to be updated more. Yeah, and what else is going on? I think that's about it. Yeah, and we'll try and for people who aren't in the area, we try and upload. We've got a really good friend that loves videotaping all the bluegrass. He goes around town and videotapes a lot of different music, but he really loves doing the bluegrass stuff. And he was there at our very first. We played this vegan deli in Virginia Beach because one of our members is a big time vegan animal rights guy and all, and I'm vegetarian. So he got us our first public gig. You know, it was kind of like playing a little coffee house to 20 of our friends. You know, when you were a teenager, but it was all older people
A
now.
gig is a gig is a gig. I'm looking.
Right, and that was and it was a lot of like it was blast like our first public gig as a band and all, and yeah, like so yeah, but we try and get the videos up to you know so people who aren't around can see it because we understand that you know and we're doing it for fun. That's you know
Right.
like I said, like it's not you know we don't you know care like we don't party anymore, so we don't want the booze. We you know yeah
Just having a
half
good
of us
time.
are
Yeah.
vegetarian and vegan, so we don't care about the barbecue plate you're gonna throw at us.
Yeah. It's yeah, man. It's been
So yeah, but
it's been
it's
far
just a
too
party.
long.
That's
Yeah. Like far too long since you and I have got to chat. And we're gonna definitely have to do this
oh
again.
yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, since the VA approved my disability last year, I don't have to work anymore. Like that's why I've just been doing me. That's why I'm playing music now. Like plus I was always too much of a perfectionist to play out. Like because I didn't want just anybody to play with. Because
Yeah.
I've had little projects. I've had little
Yeah.
projects throughout the years, but we
It's
normally just get together and jam.
yeah, it's got to be to take it out. It's got to be, you know what I mean. Especially because you and I both
Yeah,
have that. We have that quality filter when it comes to music. I think that everybody
yeah.
that's watching and listening to this should also probably go to your Instagram so they can see some of your beautiful growth.
Yeah, that would be my personal Instagram, TJ the DJ WFOS. That was the radio show that I worked at that Skip was talking about earlier that I used to interview him on. So yeah,
My, how the
and
tables have turned.
yeah,
I
what was that?
said, my, how the tables have turned. Now I'm interviewing
Right,
you.
yeah.
Well, man,
No, and that's what I'm saying. Like I'm focusing on me now. I've been doing improv lately, like over the last year, and yeah, like but at the same time, like it's like I told one of the owners of the theater, one of our teachers, I'm like, I don't get on the stage for everybody else. I get on the stage for me. Like, and it's
yeah,
not my
it's.
ego. It's just because this is what I enjoy
I
doing,
am.
and if people want to hear it, people want to hear it.
I am making art, and if you like it, that's fine. Otherwise, I'm going to
I don't
continue
even think
making
what I
art.
do is art half the I'm just trying to finish the song on the same note as the rest of the band.
I'm just trying to hit the changes and make sure I show up on time and in tune. Dude, I love you. It's been
Oh
too
man.
long. We're gonna have to do this again
Yeah.
soon.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. No, I had a lot of fun, Skip. Thanks for asking me to do it.
Oh, the first of many, my friend.
All right. Well, I guess we'll chat soon then.
All right, take care of yourself, man.
Cool. Peace.
All right, that'll be all for today. Remember, peace, love throughout the world, and don't forget to rock and roll.